right. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us for our Advent series. Just by way of introduction to everyone who's watching, this is the Right Reverend Brian Sage. Brian is a very dear friend of ours that we knew in seminary. We were all in seminary together. And he is now among the ranks of the episcopate as the bishop of the Diocese of Mississippi. Brian has continued his ministry, also running the diocesan camp there. He's been very involved in camping ministry for a long time, as well as recovery ministry that he's been involved with for over 30 years. So, Bishop Sage, welcome. Thank you very, very much for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So the question that I am posing in these this Advent series, the larger question is, this is a, once in a many generation pandemic that we are in. It's going to be in the history books that some kids are going to read about it, great grandkids are going to read about it someday. And it is a really hard time for people to live through. So I am looking to find and give hope during this time, and sort of the larger question of where is God in all of this? What do you think? Where's God in all of this mess?
That's a good question, huh? First of all, let me start off by saying, just like Kelly said, I've known her for a long time. She and Gar and I were in the same class at the Seminary of the Southwest, class of '97. My wife, Kyle, was a year ahead of us in school. She graduated in '96. And so we were, we've known each other for a great deal of time. We're both part of clergy couples, so we realized the complexity of both sides of the marriage being clergy. So it's we have a lot in common and a lot of history together. I need to say one thing about that history. Yes, they were at my wedding. But also that Gar and I used to get together at least once a month, if not more, and go see just the grossest horror movies we could when we lived in Austin. And it was awesome that there was somebody else there that could appreciate just the that genre of film. And I've always appreciated Gar through the years for many reasons and his friendship, but that's one of them. And also appreciated Kelly's friendship, of course, because she'd let me and Gar do that. And Kyle as well. The four of us did things together. So anyhow, it's good to be here. I'm glad to be part of your ministry. Those were good times. Yeah.
It was a good time. It's a long time ago.
This pandemic has been an issue that's really, God, it's been challenging in so many ways. I don't think that, I don't think it's something that we thought about in 1994 when we started seminary. And because, I know a year ago, this wasn't even on my radar screen to have something like this pop into it. And, when I think about the whole theological piece of it, I'm reminded of that guy that taught us systematics, Frank Sagano.
Yeah,
that's who it was, Frank Sagano. and I remember asking, when we talk about, I think we talk about the theology of evil. And he'd say that's not the theology of evil, it's the problem of evil. And then he'd lead us through, he'd lead us out of these rabbit holes that second year seminarians would get ourselves tangled up in, and then and help us unwind things. And I remember him, and this shows how long ago we were in seminary, because I don't think this guy's really enters. I don't think John Macquarie really factors into things anymore. But if you remember Macquarie's systematic theology, he talked about those things, the problem of evil, and how, the within evil you have two different types. You got the human made and natural evil. Natural being those hurricanes and those sorts of things that we can't really do anything about. And then the human made evil, when, violence is perpetrated on another human being by a human being. And so, I would have to say that pandemic, because of the nature of how these things spread, kind of falls into a little bit of both of those categories, right? It's there's a human made piece of it, because um, if I'm walking around and I'm sick and I don't realize it, and whether I'm wearing a mask or not, and aerosols, go from my mouth, and somebody catches it, it's kind of a human made thing,
Mhm.
right? And all of this is part of the larger overarching piece of creation.
Mhm.
So we've got the nature and creation involved. And so it's a so I guess where I'm going with this is that, the pandemic is part of creation. I have to say that where I have found the greatest glimpse of the kingdom, and the greatest sense of God being involved within this time, it's been in how we've responded. And I've seen some really incredible responses. I mean, the fact that we're doing this right now.
Mhm.
Um, let's not kid ourselves. A year ago, Zoom was like a last resort for a meeting.
Right.
It was like, well, this seminarian wants a job in Mississippi, and they're in Berkeley, California. So there's no way I'm going to fly him out here. So how do we use this Zoom thing? Let's see if we can get him on there. But now it's become very natural. Um, I never would have thought that I would have been in a point where I, essentially turn on my Zoom room and have it going all the time in the day,
Mhm.
but I often do that. And,
Right, right, right.
so our response to things, and the way I've seen the body of Christ step up to the plate,
Mhm.
and be creative,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, be uh, look out for each other, whether it's the senior citizen who's part of the church that we've known for 1,000 years, who went when our kids were born, sent the lovely cards, and and now we're in a position where we're cooking for them and leaving something on their front porch. Yeah, so really, I have to, I think for me it's been you within creation, where I found God is God the creator,
Mhm.
and now us as humankind, and as liturgical leaders, creating again,
Mhm.
and figuring out new ways to share the love of Christ with our brothers and sisters. And that has been that's been really gratifying. Yeah,
Mhm.
been real 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 glorious at times, to be honest.
What good things are going to come out of this on the other side for the church?
um
In that,
yeah,
Joseph being sold off, his
yeah,
brother selling him off, but good
yeah,
things came out of it kind of way.
that which was intended for evil
Exactly. Uh-huh.
is good, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um I think what we're gonna see is, they say that every 500 years the church goes through a reformation.
Yeah.
And so if we look back, 500 years ago was the Protestant Reformation. Before that, I think it was the Great Schism in 1000. 500, I guess, is probably the iconoclastic controversy. I don't, but we're at the point right now for
We're
another
due.
for another reformation, and I think it's happening.
Mhm.
And I think that what we're going to see at the end of this is some new ways for us to be the church. And I think in some ways we may be seeing, and it's difficult, but we may be seeing um, permission being given to not do things the way they've always been done.
Mhm.
For example, a year ago at this time, if I was having a discussion with a church that was in decline for whatever reasons, population, lack of population growth in the city where they are, or some of the shifting needs of that community. Maybe there's another church 6 miles away, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
One of the things, and I asked them, what is it that what is it that you're the most scared of? Not, what are you the most afraid of losing?
Mhm.
Across the board, they would, in all likelihood, say the sacraments,
Mhm.
and specifically weekly Eucharist.
Mhm.
Um, but today, they're they've gotten comfortable again with the office services. They've gotten comfortable with morning prayer,
Mhm.
or this is a, and you've probably seen this in various churches you've served. Churches get really, no, our service is at 11 a.m. Sunday morning,
Right.
period, end of discussion.
Right.
but
Right. Right.
but now they're contemplating things like, yeah, I think we could do a 3 o'clock service.
Mhm.
I think that would work, or a different time. And so I think what we're beginning to see some of that sense of, hey, there's other ways to worship, and that's okay. And also, denominational walls have been falling for a while, but they're the foundation is nearly crumbled through this, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, for example, I've got a little community up in the Delta, in the Mississippi Delta, and our we don't have a priest there right now. The Presbyterian Church doesn't have a priest right now, but there's retired Presbyterian pastor in one neighboring community. There's a retired Episcopal priest in another community. They both have been clear that they don't want to. They're not in a position to do weekly services, but they've come together to talk about, hey, well, why don't we bring these two congregations together, and I'll do the first and third Episcopal style
Mhm.
Holy Eucharist, and you do the second and fourth Sunday in Presbyterian style, and then we'll switch off on the Wednesdays, so they'll be able to have that community in between. And so, and it's okay.
Yeah.
There's gratitude
Uh-huh.
For the attempt to work together.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas before, that would have been a real challenge. But I think there's some real grateful hearts, and so I think that is going to be something that could serve the church well in days to come.
Yeah.
And I would also add that one of the blessings is that, and you've checked out some of the breakfast with the
Mhm.
bishop, or iced tea with the bishop,
Yep.
that kind of thing. There's some cool stuff going on with that, and I've been able to make some connections with folks that way. That's been really gratifying, and I'm exploring and experimenting with how I can create a digital church,
Mhm.
fully digital,
Mhm.
where I wouldn't be where I can do it on a day where I wouldn't conflict with one of the other parishes that's bricks and
Right.
mortar.
Mhm.
But and I call it Saint Veronica's.
Mhm. Mhm.
Veronica was the woman who wiped Jesus's brow, and his imprint stayed on the
Mhm.
on the handkerchief. And
Mhm.
so, I figure she's got to be the patron saint of videography, right? So how can we do that? Create a fully digital worshiping community, and increase
Mhm.
that connection. And the fascinating part about it is, I've had some folks reach out to me because of the digital offerings, that have said, thank you for ha- this. I haven't been able to leave the house, and I haven't been to a church service in ages,
Mhm.
because I can't travel.
Mhm.
And these are not necessarily older shut-ins. These are some
Right.
folks who, for whatever reason, there's one guy contacted me who's blind,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
just, I was really touched to learn that. And so
Yeah.
I think that's where we might find some blessing within all
Mhm.
this.
Mhm. Um, Anything else? Any final words that you'd like to?
Uh, yeah, I do have some
Mhm.
final words. The This period of time has has been a challenge for everyone. And it's, at times become politicized. It's at times become pastoral. It's at other times divided folks. But I think if we fail to see some of the blessings that this has brought, and if we fail to really acknowledge the importance of community, we will have missed um, what's potentially um, a moment in the life of the church that's going to make the body of Christ stronger.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.